Story time about how I pulled my foster kitten James from the emergency vet hospital twice to try to save his life. James and his sister Jessie had been with us for about 3 weeks. We pulled them from a rural shelter in California, and we were treating them for ringworm. So the day that I pinpointed something was wrong was when I was taking skin cultures for both kittens. I picked James up, and his stomach was just huge. It was huge. And he was thin and kind of just fell into my lap. Like, he was really weak. So I immediately rushed him to the nearby emergency room, and before any tests were done, they suspected FIP. The vet came and talked to us, and they were like, because of the sudden weight loss, jaundice, lethargy, bloating, fever, it's probably FIP. And asked if we wanted the blood test done anyways, because whatever diagnosis based on the condition he was in, he was likely too far gone and would need to be euthanized. What's important to understand about FIP is the onset of symptoms are super fast. It is very difficult to diagnose because there is not one conclusive test that says a cat has FIP. They have to go off of the symptoms, and oftentimes the symptoms mimic other diseases. And because FIP is so rare that they try to rule out other diseases before they decide, like, oh, it's probably FIP. And then by the time a cat is diagnosed with FIP, a lot of times it's too late. So I asked about the FIP drugs, and the vet refused to talk to me about it or make any recommendations, which I understood because they're not legal. So I said yes to the test, knowing that we were likely going to euthanize him. Even though they're not definitive, I needed to make sure that that was the right decision. So the vet said they would do the test and be back with the results in 30 minutes. And so we went back to the waiting room, waited an hour. And in that hour, I texted one of my volunteers who had her own kitten go through FIP to see if there was, like, even a sliver of a chance that we could do anything to help James. And my main question was, what was the threshold for treating a kitten with FIP? Because the vet did say he was too far gone and would likely die anyways if we didn't euthanize him. And that's when she told me the FIP drugs would give him, like, a real fighting chance, and that there have been cats in worse condition that survived because they were given the treatment. But time was of the essence. So we were, like, connected to someone who could supply us with the medication the same night. And we checked when the vet would get back to us with the blood test results. But they said because the vet was busy, it would be another hour before he could come back and talk to us about them. I told them that's not going to work. We want James discharged from the hospital. The vet can call us with the results later. So we took James, paid our bill, and went to get the FIP drugs. And on the way home, the vet called and said that his blood test results, along with his symptoms, likely point to him having FIP, and that he should be euthanized. So I told the vet, like, I'm not going to lie to you, I got the FIP drugs, and then I asked if with supportive care, like, if James had a chance. And then the vet wouldn't answer based on my question about the drugs. So I reworked it, and I was just like, okay, so based on the blood work, what does he need? And then the vet said the main issues were dehydration and anemia, so he'd need IV fluids and a blood transfusion, which the hospital would be able to provide. And so we were wary about hospitalizing James because he needed his medication twice a day. And so I asked if we could give him the medication ourselves while he was being hospitalized, because he needed the supportive care and he needed the drugs. Because it really was his only chance. And the vet said he wasn't sure. So once we got home, I just made up a plan. I made up a game plan. First, I gave James his medication. So I loaded up the syringe and gave him his first injection in the trunk of my car, right then and there. And then because he needed that supportive care, we hopped back into the car, took him to the hospital, where we readmitted him for IV fluids and the blood transfusion. And when I told the front desk about, like, our situation, I immediately received pushback. And they said if he's being hospitalized, we can't just take him anytime we want. And then we asked if it was possible to give him his medication in the morning because he needed it every 12 hours. And then, like, the girl at the front desk was just like, you can't have that here. It's illegal. And I was just like, I don't have anything with me. Like, I don't have anything with me. I'm just asking how we can all help James. And then they reiterated if he's being hospitalized, we're not allowed to come give him the injection. So I said, okay, I want him hospitalized for tonight and give him what he needs. And I'll pick him up at 11 a.m. because that's when he needs his medication. And they said, well, if he's not ready, we're not going to give him back to you. And I was just like, what? The vet did say that he would need days of hospitalization before he would be rehydrated and his results would go back to normal. But I couldn't take that risk because he needed the drugs. So like the longest I could hospitalize him was for that 12 hours. What I really wanted to say to this receptionist that was arguing with me was, if it was your pet or family member and they were literally going to die anyways, and you had the only drug that might save them, don't tell me you wouldn't be standing here trying to do the same thing I'm trying to do for James. So I was just like, whatever, I could keep arguing, but I'm tired and done with this. So we left James there, paid the deposit, went home, didn't sleep. I called to check on him at 2 a.m. and 7 a.m. I asked how he was doing after the supportive care, and they said he was doing better. Shift change had already happened, so we told them what the situation was and how time sensitive it was that he receive his medication, and I asked very nicely if he could be discharged, and luckily they said yes. When it came time for pickup, they didn't give us any trouble. We were able to take him home and give him his medication. A few days later, another vet called with the results from his stomach fluid, which was also conducive with his FIP diagnosis. And she asked if we had gotten him the help he needed, and if not, she had information on where we could get help and pointed us to the active clinical trials in our area, which I thanked her for, and I told her James was doing well on medication. He got it the same night, and I wished that we ran into her that night because it would have been so much less of an uphill battle. James is still currently on FIP treatment because it lasts 84 days, but in 14 days, like, everything is completely back to normal. It's like nothing happened. Like it's literally like he never had it. And it's crazy. And had I listened to them that night, like, he wouldn't be alive. And I think the moral of the story is you have to go with what your gut is telling you. And honestly, if the cat is gonna die anyways, like, you might as well give it your best shot. So, yeah.